Now, if you find yourself in a position where you've got a swimming pool, maybe the kids have grown up, maybe the kids have moved out, and you don't use your swimming pool anymore, then you could actually turn your swimming pool into a pond. So this pool has not functioned as a swimming pool for a number of years, and we have a spa over here as well, which is in exactly the same condition. Now, the situation here is the filters have been off for a long time, and we don't want to re-engage the filters. But the big downside to any of these situations of large bodies of still water is mosquitoes. And if I have one hate in this world, I would say it is mosquitoes. Actually, just got bitten by one then. My neighbour, I lived next to a deceased estate for a while, and there was a swimming pool next to my house, and there was literally a cloud of mosquitoes over the top of the pool, and they were eating us alive. So what I did was started off by putting a little school of mountain clouds into the pool, and they did fabulously well swimming around. Then I got a bit adventurous and started putting rosy barbs. I had schools of rainbow fish, blue eyes. There's all bitterlings. So there's all various options you've got that you can put into the pool, even to the point where there was schools of them. Now, the other thing to be aware of is that when it's originally a pool, there'd be chlorine, so you need to give it plenty of time, I'd say at least a month, for the chlorine to get out of it. And then the transition phase from the pool, a nice clear pool, to something that looks natural, for a period of time, it's going to look pretty awful. Then after a while, it will start to look natural. Now, this one's basically at a point now where it really does look quite natural. It really sort of looks just like a pond would be in a situation like that. Now, if you did want to have clearer water, there are various UV sterilizer units that can make a difference. You can run the water through a UV sterilizer. The UV sterilizer will kill any algae spores that are in the water and clear the water up. So that's something you could consider. Now, the next thing is understanding bioload. So if you just went and put, say, 20 to 100 mountain clouds into this pond, they will do a great job eating all of the mosquito larvae. They will not eat the tadpoles, because a lot of people love the frogs. And they will very quickly and efficiently eat all of the mosquitoes. So once again, there are other options. Zebra danios, that's another one that I used to have in my neighbour's pool. So there are various cold water options. And the other thing you need to be aware of is when to add. So the start of summer, late spring, that's a very good time to add them. In the colder months of winter is a very bad time to add them. And then you'll notice that particularly if there's plenty of ground cover for the eggs to get in amongst, then you'll notice that the fish will start breeding. So this situation here is pretty much ideal because you've got all this leaf litter on the bottom. So when these fish breed, they'll go and scatter their eggs all over this leaf litter, and then some of the eggs will be safe in there amongst the leaf litter, and they'll get a chance to hatch. There's quite a lot of tadpoles buzzing around in here right now, and there's a lot of wrigglers, and there's those little rowboat things. So the biological diversity in here is already quite good. You can also consider plants. So we've got some nice steps here. That's a perfect place to pot some lilies. You could consider plants like rush. There's all sorts of plants. So there's a frog around here somewhere that I can hear. He wanted to be in the video, I think. But I'm not a fan of duckweed, hyacinth, or any of those top plants because they just take over the bloody thing. And then in no time at all, you're struggling to pull it all out. There is a benefit in that it's extracting nutrients out while you're doing it, but I find it's just a complete pest. So I'm not such a fan of the plants on the top. Now I've tested this water up, and at the moment there's no ammonia. There's no ammonia is first degree fish waste. There's no nitrite, that's second degree fish waste. There's no nitrate, and there would be waste in here due to the biological breakdown of any of this organic matter. But at the moment, within the sediment on the bottom, there's plenty of good bacteria to break down any of these organics. So currently now, there's no ammonia, there's no nitrite, there's no nitrate. The KH is 1, so 1 is acceptable, but adding like a little bit of coral rubble, that would help the KH. Now, if you're going to do a project like this, I'd probably recommend every now and then grabbing a sample of water out of the pool and come down and see us. So once again, in this case, we've got a spa and we've got a pool. So in a perfect world, bring a sample of water from both. If you just did that, say once a quarter, that'd be wonderful, just so we can keep an eye on the water quality. And once again, if you're not getting mosquitoes, then the mountain clouds are doing a great job. As far as locating the mountain clouds are concerned, that will depend on how many you've got. And in a deep pond like this, it'll be very hard to see them, which is good because it'll also be very hard for the birds to see them, so the birds don't eat them. But this sort of area here, offset against the light steps, that's where you're likely to see them. And once again, if you get them in around start of spring, summer, then they'll breed. So they don't tend to breed in the colder months, but they do tend to breed in the warmer months. So it really can be surprising how quickly they can populate a pond like this. Like you can introduce 20 or 100 of them in there, then you can sort of almost forget about them. They do a spectacular job with the mosquitoes, and then over time they'll just breed and breed and breed, and they'll get to a point where you have no problem seeing them. There's plenty of them in here, and then they'll breed to a certain degree. So the first limiting factor that they're going to have if they're breeding is food. So if you introduce just a very small amount of food, then the fish would really appreciate it, and then the fish will eventually sometimes create a relationship with you because they get to know you and they get to know that you're the mug that feeds them. So it's quite common that when you walk to the side of the pool, they'll all come over and greet you. Fish like goldfish and koi are more known for that. But if you're going to put goldfish and koi in a pool like this, it is absolutely an option. But just be aware that they grow very big. And also they're much more visible for the birds. So depending on your area, if you have birds that eat fish, then the goldfish may get munched by the birds, depending on the situation. And it is a lot of trial and error. You can just give it a go. So really, any fish you want are going to do a wonderful job with the mosquitoes if you're not feeding them. But then the next thing you need to do is identify when you've got to feed them. So therefore, if you're looking down on the fish and you notice the fish getting skinny, then that means that they do need to be fed. If you've got too many fish in there and they're getting skinny, then that's the time when either you've got to let nature balance it out and they've got to let nature do its course, or you can consider increasing aeration or filtration at that point. Now you'll notice when the wind blows across here, it agitates the surface quite nicely. So of course there's not much wind right now, but about 30 seconds ago, when I thought to make that point, the wind was going very, very beautifully. So basically, if you have a very small volume of animals or fish in here, your potential maintenance is potentially 0. Once again, if you did bring a sample of water down to the shop, we can keep an eye on your pH and KH. A bit of coral in the bottom is going to fix that. The other thing that is water, the GH is basically 0. Which a little bit of salt wouldn't hurt. If we tipped a little bit of salt in here, that would help the fish's immune system a little bit. But with fish like mountain clouds, it's not overly important. The other thing you could consider doing in a situation like this, which I've seen done very, very beautifully as well, is turtles. Particularly you've got, what the hell are you? Look at that. Some big insect bouncing around in there. I think it's like a dragonfly larvae. I think that is. Anyway, turtles are another option, but you do need to consider and make sure the turtles can't get out. Otherwise they'll run around in your garden. The other thing you can think about too for a bit of fun is yabbies. You put yabbies in an environment like this. A lot of it is trial and error, and it's a lot of fun. So you can also swim in it too. So if you actually have a nice biologically stable ecosystem like this, it's debatably better than the chlorine. And if you've got nice, good, healthy water, particularly if there's not too much sludge on the bottom, which could cause hydrogen sulfide, some of the filtered pools that I've been involved in, they call them swim ponds. And it's beautiful filtered water with fish in it. And they turn their pool into literally a swim pond. So the clarity of the water is going to be governed by how good your filtration is. And if you don't have filtration, obviously you're not going to have super clear water. But if you just want to have a nice, big, natural, healthy environment, then it's just a matter of not putting in too many fish and make sure you don't feed them too much. So if you do feed, you got to put a tiny little bit in. And then if you just once a quarter bring a sample of water and a video down to the shop, let us monitor it, and that's about all you need to do. So this pond here is completely ready to add some fish, and away they go. It is literally that easy. Anyway, if you have experience with converting a pool to a pond or a swim pond, then put a little note on the bottom of this video. It is a very fun way of utilizing a beautiful asset like a pool, particularly if it's just turning into a big swamp in your backyard. Can be done very cheaply, can be done very fun, but if you want super clear water and you want heaps of fish, then you're going to have to spend a lot of money on filtration. It would look absolutely awesome, but that's a completely different conversation, and that's a completely different budget. It's all relative to what you put in. The other thing is the food's really important. I'd be feeding what's called Spectrum's probiotics, because Spectrum's probiotic food has got a probiotic bacteria in the food, and the bacteria in the food means that when the fish poo, the bacteria in the poo eats the poo. And then there are various other products that you could consider using in the pool, such as the water cleanser. And the water cleanser, what it does is puts a big block of hydrocarbon into the pool, and then the hydrocarbon stimulates the growth of what's called OEMs, or oil-eating microorganisms, and then they come alive and compete with the algae, and they often will help to clear the water up. So you can play around with biological remedies like that. Anyway, it's a lot of fun, but it does require patience, and it does require not doing too much. Don't feed too much, don't add too much.
I can see it.
Yeah, so I found one of the frogs. So you can see all the mozzies too. Yeah, so what's going on here is this is now nighttime.
Yeah.
And what I've done is put some coral sand into the pool. And what the coral sand will do is raise the KH up and should help to keep it up to a degree. And then over here, we're going to put the rest of the coral sand like this. Here's the possums. Okay, so that's that done. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to chuck in some water clear, so green clear blocks, and then they're going to slowly help to kill off the algae in the water. And these are fairly fast acting and fairly short term. And then we've also got the long term, and this should last for several months. What these little balls do, these are hydrocarbon balls. Now these hydrocarbon balls actually allow the formation of what's called OEMs, or oil-eating microorganisms. And the idea is these oil-eating microorganisms are very aggressive scavengers, and then they will compete with the algae for food. So those little balls have a shelf life as well, so they'll work for a period of time. Now, and then they'll help to establish cultures of microorganisms in the pond, and these cultures of microorganisms will help to keep the environment nice and healthy. So the next thing we're doing is going to start introducing some water. I'll start emptying all them out. So what we're going to do is just take a little bit of water from the pond. Then I'm going to tip it in there. Then I'm going to grab a bit more. There are a lot of mozzies here, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so I think the mozzies will pop that in there. And we'll give that a good 5 minutes because the water's actually very similar anyway. And then we'll chuck a bit in with Mr. Koi before we think about releasing him.
Oh, you want me to put a bit of...
Alright, so what I've done now is just thrown all the water cleanser in the pool, and I've put some water cleanser in the pond. Now we've got some yabbies. We're hoping that they will breed and grow and thrive. So we've been acclimatizing them. The water's pretty similar anyway, but off they go. They can... There we go. They can go and live their yabby life.
Go straight to the bottom.
Straight to the bottom, and you'll never see them again until you go yabbying.
Alright.
Now we've got our Danios. These guys can swim off and enjoy their life like they're getting let go like Free Willy, these fellas.
How big do they grow, Paul? Those ones?
Yeah, they're not a big fish. They'll grow like that big. Yeah, they're not a big fish. So they'll just bounce around on the top. Now, it's breeding time of year now. So hopefully these guys will start breeding for you.
We should leave them alone for a while.
And I do recommend getting some mountain clouds too.
Some what?
Well, mountain clouds.
Okay.
I just didn't have any at the shop right now.
Yeah.
Mountain clouds are just a bit easier to breed,
Okay.
so they're more likely to breed. And then, as I said, if the neighbours end up deciding that the frogs are the enemy, then we've just got to put some bigger fish.
And they'll eat the frog.
And they actually won't eat the frogs, but once they're here, then they'll start eating all the tadpoles,
Oh yeah. And there won't be any frogs.
and then the frogs will just go back to normal levels. And in the meantime, I can't wait for these fish to do their job because I'm already getting bitten by mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Now let's go let go of the koi. Kind of lumpy. Oh, where's my fish net? I have my fish net here somewhere. And he goes.
So we can take that off now.
You can, but he's probably going to like it on
Is he?
because birds.
Okay, yeah.
He's probably big enough not to get eaten by the birds, but it does depend on the bird.
Oh, we'll leave it on.
So then he can do his job,
Easy.
and then we'll just keep a track of this. And then if you can just get a water sample of the pond and nip it down to Majestic Aquariums maybe once a quarter,
Yep.
and make a little video of how it's looking.
Yep.
And then we can sort of play around with it until we keep improving the situation. And then I'll remember to next time I go to that job and get that big pump, then I'll let you know so we can look at giving you that pump. and that'll give you some water flow in here, and that will increase your capacity and increase your oxygen and redox potential, and that will help to keep it clear a little bit more too. Good fun.